Welcome, Blane. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of our series, A Seat at the Table. If you want to start by giving us just a brief overview and a background about you.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm from Central Illinois, Logan County, Elkhart, Illinois. I grew up on a grain, corn and soybean farm, and always had show pigs. My sisters and I showed in 4-H and FFA and those things growing up. My dad showed, and his dad showed. So we've had purebred hogs forever, and been grain farmers forever. So it only made sense that I come back and have purebred hogs and be a grain farmer. I went to college, judged at Lakeland College, and then also at Western Illinois University, and came home. So always just been a farmer and raised hogs. And so then, as we kind of started our deal, my wife Christy and I have been married for, I guess, a little over 16 years. And so we've been in the hog business together for a little over 16 years. We've kind of gone from that 4-H project to 40 or 50 primarily Duroc sows. That's kind of who we are or what we do.
Do you want to talk about your career journey a little bit, or kind of what got you involved in the state association?
I'm on the school board. My dad was on the school board. My grandparents were on the school board. We've been the kind of people that have been involved in the community and in different ways. Always had those contacts and those just people that you'd networked with, whether it was at a show or at college or wherever it may have been, and kind of settling in back here at the farm. And it was probably something like 8 or 9 years ago, a man named Kurt Zaire from here in Illinois, who's very involved in the state association and someone I've always looked up to and respected a bunch. He approached me at the state fair 8 or 9 years ago and said, "Hey, you really need to be on." He was getting off of the Illinois Pork board of directors. He said, you should really consider it. So I said thank you and tried to ignore him, and said I'd consider it and hoped he didn't call back, to be honest with you, because it was just another board and more stuff to do, right? So Kurt was persistent, and he called me again at harvest time and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about it, sure. And again, kind of put him off. And he called me again. He said, "Hey, you need to get serious or not do it. Where are you at?" And he kind of, I guess, talked me into it. And it was a great thing that he did. So fast forward, I went ahead and filled out the paperwork and ran as an at-large position on Illinois Pork Board and came in as a show pig guy, which you can imagine there wasn't a bunch of us show pig guys. But it was good. I immediately walked in the room and was rubbing elbows with really the leaders in the swine industry in the state of Illinois. I say rubbing elbows loosely because they had a lot more business to do than I did on a day-to-day basis as far as just number of hogs and what they were doing. But it was neat. I got elected and served 6 years on the board. I initially was an at-large director, and then I actually became the District 4 director for the last 2 or 3 years that I was on the board. I sat in a district role and was able to be involved, I guess. I got to know more about how the state associations worked with a lot of good people in the youth and education role at our association, and have a good relationship, there. And I've met a lot of people that I never would have met had I not been involved with that association. I was a member of the PLI group several years ago. So I got to go to DC and see the behind the scenes in the way MPPC works, and have had interactions with National Pork Board as well, because it's been neat to be involved and bring a totally different perspective, I think, than the average board of director would have, or the general population there, and to maybe tell a little bit of a different story when we get to tell what we do and what keeps us awake at night and gets us up in the morning. So that's kind of where it is. Currently, I'm no longer on the board of directors. Technically, I'm now the purebred rep on the Illinois Pork Producers board. So I still go to the meetings, just don't have a vote, I guess.
Well, you had this mentor that was pushing you into this position. Aside from that, did you have any other motivating factors? Anything that motivated you to pursue this role?
Well, I think I mentioned that we've entered the commercial industry on the contract growth side since I've gotten involved with Illinois Pork, and that was one, I guess, personally, was just to learn more about that side of it. Just to be more on the same page, and something that I talk about a lot when we talk about, how you can point out that the two industries, while we still have a pig, there are times where maybe there's not a whole lot more as far as similarities between the goals and just the production, the ways of production and things like that. But ultimately, a lot of the leaders and a lot of the people that make decisions on the commercial side have some form of a 4-H FFA, show something background. But I think if you take a step back and you look at the leadership roles in these bigger companies with these integrators and on the animal health side, and even in these state associations, a lot of them had a 4-H or FFA project of some form. And I think bridging that gap is important, particularly as we go forward and we talk about where the workforce is and where the labor is going to come from going forward, and who's going to, whether it's on the grain side or on the livestock side, the owners and the players in this thing are not in their 20s, and so who's coming next and who's going to help kind of be the leadership or be the the management, or maybe the pin cleaner or the truck driver. There's so many different opportunities that I don't know that we've probably not tapped all those resources just quite yet.
You kind of mentioned bridging the gap, and that's something that we hear all the time, especially in today's day and age and in the pork
Mm-hmm.
industry. How do you believe that state associations can help bridge that gap between show pig producers and industry stakeholders?
Well, I think so. So those are conversations we have in Illinois now. The things that are being talked about nationally, even in the elephant in the room, is foreign animal disease, and more specifically African swine fever. Right? If African swine fever hits, it will change the way we all do what we do, and no matter what, it would be similar to say COVID with the human population, but something that's been big, and we had one last summer, the foreign animal disease roundtables. Well, I don't know of any other time in the state of Illinois where you would have the executive director of our association, the state vet, people on both sides of the commercial and show industry in the same room and actually getting along. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but we had a common goal, and that was to listen to the presentation and then go through the exercise, and that was big. And so a big thing that came out of that meeting was the traceability. More specifically, if there is a foreign animal disease outbreak, how do we account for where the pigs are? And I think that's something that the two industries are coming together on, and I think it's something. Well, it is something that we're working on in Illinois, as far as helping better educate the show families the importance of understanding and knowing the rules if something like that happens, and then following them. And I think if we can understand those things, everyone's more informed, and then it's easier for everyone to work together with a common goal at that point. And I think that's probably a big one. Other things we've done in the state of Illinois is we had a leadership change here from 2024 to 2025 with the superintendent of our swine show at the state fair. And it was really neat to be a part of the group that came together and collectively sent a letter of support to get behind one person to be the leader as we go forward, and that tied the Team Purebred or CPS and NSR along with Illinois. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but along with Illinois Bred, which is a group of breeders in Illinois. But most importantly, I think those you would expect. Illinois Pork Producers Association also signed that letter and was a part of that group. And that's a big deal because we all work together knowing that if we can make this swine show at the Illinois State Fair continue and maybe even be better, then we can all get benefits from there, and we can start talking about bringing education back to the show pig barn and being able to work on things like traceability, like what are we going to do in the event of a foreign animal disease outbreak, like PQA or health papers with 840 tags. The list goes on. But the important thing is to have that relationship between the show pig producers and the commercial producers in this state, I think is important. And it's been really neat to watch for the last 6 or 8 years to kind of watch that evolve in this state. We really all do want the same thing, and if we can work together, it's a much better process.
Definitely, most definitely. What, as a show pig producer, how has that experience kind of helped you prepare for the leadership role that you did have, and then the one maybe that you have now?
It's huge because even as a kid growing up, I never would have grabbed the microphone at an NJSA event or the Oklahoma Youth Expo or Ohio State Fair, whatever it is. Growing up in the show pig business, kind of almost force yourself to put yourself out of your comfort zone and maybe meet new people or maybe give that speech or be on the judging team or whatever that is. And I think our roots in our family growing up with those opportunities just again kind of continued to add to the experiences we went through. You better be passionate about doing this kind of stuff, or you're just wasting your time and you're going to get burnt out in a hurry. Because it takes time and it's volunteer, right? So you're going to meetings or you're on conference calls or you're on trips or whatever it is, and if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to continue to do it. Finding what it is that you want to be good at and what you want to be involved in is also something that I think you learn at a young age by being involved in those things.
So having, such a deep root in this show pig producer industry,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say has been like the most rewarding aspect of your involvement?
That's a good question. So we've raised since I was a kid. We've raised reds, and we've had the opportunity to do some neat things. We've raised some pigs that have won shows, and we've raised some boars and some breeding stock, and that have gone on to work for here and others. And probably the neatest thing to be able to do it as a family and as a group. I mean, to have the kids be as involved as they are, and it's to different degrees. We have one son, Luke, that he'd rather show sheep. So he shows sheep, which is great, but he's still involved in the family business and the operation around here as a breeder. But I think that's probably the neatest thing is I guess I'm showing my age a little bit. I'm getting old now. To have the kids be involved and to make it their passion, something that they want to do. And it's not just doing chores, but it's going out and taking care of the hogs and doing what they're supposed to do on a day-to-day basis from whatever it may be that day. But then to see them grow in their role on our farm and maybe someday in the industry is pretty neat. I said we've got a sophomore and he's starting to talk about who he's going to be in 4 or 5 years as far as where he maybe wants to go to school or what that looks like. And it's kind of fun to kind of think back to what it was when I was a sophomore in college. I didn't have to wonder what school I was going to go to, but he's kind of, I guess, progressed a little bit in to where he's at, and the others probably will be too, versus where I was. And it's kind of neat to see that growth and that progression.
So you've had, multiple roles, as in roles at the state association level, and then roles just in your own operation, whether that be, your crops or your show pigs. How has all of those roles changed your perspective on the show pig industry?
Well, I think it's not only that, my role has changed even, within on our farm as I've gotten older and more experienced, or, the longer, like you say, the longer you're in a state association, you understand just different ways of the way things work. And maybe as someone moves on or takes a different role, maybe you step into a new leadership role and then, or whatever it may be. And then you got to learn a whole new set. And I think that continues to push me every day to try to be better, to be good. Because when you're at the top of your game, then those around you will be at the top of their game.
Would you say that having this new perspective has changed how you view the impact of the show pig industry as a whole, and how being involved at a state association level, how truly impactful it is for the kids growing up in the industry?
I do, because I think, as I say, my role changes. I mean, I mentioned judging. I judge enough places and see enough kids and enough people that we, when Ben and I, Bobo and I did OYE there, the guilts last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, to be the SIF judge, and when maybe 50 or 60 of them in a class, and you're telling that kid in 3 to 5 seconds whether their pig, meets the qualification in your mind to go to the show ring, or if they get sifted, essentially. And then you justify that to them. And a few times, when you're doing that, I mean, you're there and you've got a job to do and you're thinking about it, but you also have to think on your feet quickly and then make a decision. But you look up, and that young person that you've never seen before reminds you of your son or daughter standing there, and all of a sudden you're telling them, like, hey, I'm sorry, but this, and this, and your pig isn't as good as you thought it was coming down the alley now that you're out. Or you get to enjoy the joy with that kid of, hey, go up, you get to go to the big ring. And I think, from a perspective standpoint, when you're growing up showing pigs, you don't see that side of it. But as a dad who raises pigs and is making that decision, and then just for a second sharing in the joy or heartbreak of that decision, you realize that your decisions impact more than just you. And so then to bring that back to the state association, and really I talk about 4-H and FFA, but when we make a decision and say we work to work together, say that letter that we put together where we all work together to come together to find a common leader for our show in Illinois, we weren't probably as worried about making sure that the family that goes to every show every weekend and wins their fair share of banners, that family's probably going to be able to take care of themselves no matter who's doing what. But I like to think about the kid that goes to the county and state fair and maybe doesn't drive around in the rig and the trailer and all those things. But to think about that young person that just wants to be involved and wants to learn about the livestock industry, or maybe it's that family that you see at a show that they clearly look like they don't know what they're doing. And I think as I've gotten older and I've traveled more and I've dealt with more people in this industry, I see that because that was us at one time. We all come from that at some point, and I think just to have that perspective that we can make an impact on everybody. And if you look around, there's probably someone in the room that you could help, particularly if you're experienced and have the opportunity to know what's going on and who to find to come help you. So those are the people I kind of think about when we try to make those big picture decisions, or when we try to work together is, how can we impact those folks that maybe we don't exactly know what's going on, or maybe don't go to every single show but want to have fun at the state fair or at the county show. How can we make their experience just as impactful and just as good as the family that goes every weekend?
Awesome. I love that. Everybody starts somewhere. Last question for you here. What advice would you give to other producers considering leadership roles in either their state or their local associations?
Do it. And more importantly, if you're thinking about it, ask questions, because there's someone there that is doing it or has done it. And I think the other side of it, the other thing is, it's not a cookie cutter role. And by that I mean, you don't have to fit a mold or, well, this person did it, and so I've got to fill their shoes. In my case, Kurt's there to bring him back in. He was the president of the Illinois Porkers Association. He served roles nationally. There is absolutely no way that I was going to come into Illinois Pork and even begin to fill his role. And it was unreasonable to even think about it. But he saw something in me that he needed, he thought I needed to be involved. And so I eventually, took the bait and did it. But there was no way that I was going to be him to the association. So find where you fit. Find what your reason for being in the room is. And I think you can be a lot more impactful even if you're doing less than what you thought you might be. And something I've always kind of said or thought is, I don't love going to meetings. We seem to go to more of them all the time, and it's more time away from the farm, right? But if I'm going to go to a meeting, I want to be able to at least be a part of something that's making a difference. And that's a very simple approach that we take. And I don't want to sound like I'm busier or I have less time than anybody else. But I think a big thing is if you're going to make time to be involved and to go to those things, find a way to make an impact, and your time there's going to be much more enjoyable, and you're going to want to go back. Because if you're just sitting there and going through the motions, you're in someone else's way, and you're wasting your own time. So find who you can be and how you can be a person that or a member in that role that can be helpful and be an asset and a benefit. And I think the rest of it probably takes care of itself.
Well, thank you, Blane, for joining us today and being a part of our series. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and give us a few of your insights.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity. And I think what you're doing it's kind of neat to see who the people are that are doing in those roles and a part of those boards. And maybe those are the ones that you'll talk to if you decide you want to get involved someday. So I appreciate the opportunity, and it's been fun to visit.